Okay, hi everyone. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you to Lisa and Amy for all the work that they put in to these events and for inviting me here to speak. My name is Suzy Sanders and I'm the founder of Alchemy Virtual Assistance. We're a VA business and as well as running my VA business, I also help aspiring virtual assistants become successful virtual assistants. We're a family-run business. My husband is my business partner, and I get asked quite a lot how I work with my husband. I quite like him, so it is quite it is quite easy. He complements me perfectly, skill set, personality. So, but most importantly, my little boy was the reason for my business, and now my husband and I get to spend more time. We've got a flexible career. So I'm going to share a little bit about my journey with you tonight. Before I became a VA, I was executive assistant to a chief HR officer in a global recruitment company. And as I said, my son was born in 2015 and all the cliches are true. Motherhood changed me beyond recognition. Hi. And when I went back to work, I was given a degree of flexibility, but being a part-time EA wasn't enough for me. I was missing a lot of meetings. I was still expected to do 5 days worth of work and my heart wasn't in it. I felt like I needed more. And then I came across the concept of a virtual assistant. And I'm assuming that most of you, if not all of you, know what a virtual assistant is. Cool. Well, I am a self-employed virtual assistant. I decided to take the plunge and go full throttle towards growing my own business. But there's a lot of companies that are leveraging technology and allowing their assistants to work remotely. But I'm here to talk to you about building a business. So before you guys get too comfortable, I'd really like to make this session as useful as possible. So there are some post-its scattered around. So I'd really like to take a moment to ask you all what you want to gain from tonight, what information that I can share with you, and if there's any particular questions you'd like answering. Please pop them on a post-it and I will come and collect them and then I can make sure that I'm telling you the right things tonight. So I think that you might need to pass some of the post-its around. If there's any particular questions that you want answering from me, and we will have some time for some questions at the end. So if anything crops up and comes into your head while I'm talking tonight, then we can come back to that. Wave your post-it in the air if you've got a question and I'll come and grab it from you. So everybody knows what a virtual assistant is, and the virtual assistant industry is diverse and it's thriving. More and more entrepreneurs, small businesses, executives, PAs are all recognising the benefits of outsourcing to a professional virtual assistant. But equally, more and more VAs are popping up, and I think it's a hugely positive thing because more and more talented PAs and EAs are realising that they want more flexibility, they want more fulfilment, and they want a little bit more freedom. I know I did. Is there any... I can see people writing, so wave a post-it if you want to, but I'll carry on because I'm finding my flow. So the VA industry is diverse. There's VAs specialising in a lot of different skills, traditional PA services, event management, diary management, email management, project management. There's a lot of VAs offering web development, social media services, content creation, web editing. It's really broad, and I've noticed more and more over the past year or so that more businesses are actually calling themselves VAs on LinkedIn, for example, because they know people are looking for VAs. So it's a really exciting time. My business was started in 2016, and I think I've learnt more in those past 3 years than I have in my entire life, my entire corporate life. And I think I've probably aged about 50 years in that time as well, because it's not easy. It's not easy. I think a lot of people recognise the benefits, love the idea of this kind of flexible, elusive career. You know, you can sit in a coffee shop all day and the Instagram worthiness of it all. But it is hard, and I think a lot of aspiring VAs don't always consider that they're going to be starting a business, and they don't approach it as that. And you've got to find the work. You've got to do the work. You've got to do all the business stuff. It's a really steep learning curve. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, I guess, what a typical day is like for me. I am from Northampton. I have recently renovated my home office, so I very often must confess, a day in my pyjamas at home with the laptop, doing some work, but my business has been built around relationships, so I spend a lot of my time networking. And we've got a lot of clients in Northampton, in London, that's why I come down to London, and I managed to link things up today. The variety, I think, is something that keeps me going. No client's the same, no day's the same. And I very much love that about being an EA as well. So that's something that's kind of directly carried over. But we talk about this, the freedom. I'd forgotten all about those. I talk about the freedom and the flexibility a lot. And thank you. And sometimes it can be a little bit of a noose around your neck. Thank you. For example, I'll very often work in the evenings because it allows me to take a morning off. Or I'll work one weekend so I can take 4 days off. There is that degree of flexibility. I'm on my own schedule now, it took a little bit of getting used to. But it's definitely a hugely positive thing. Okay. Any tips on getting clients? Yes. How do you get clients? This is the question that I'm asked the most. How do you get clients? Thank you. And I think, so I have a habit of going off on a tangent, so please bear with me. But getting clients is the biggest fear, if you like, for a lot of virtual assistants. You've got to get the work, you've got to develop those relationships. And my first 5 clients came to me from my existing personal network. When I was at the point of finding the courage to leave my corporate job, I started talking to my friends, a couple of my colleagues who I trusted, and my first clients came that way, talking to businesses that I'd used. I did some work for my massage therapist, for example, and it's kind of grown from there. And I could probably talk to you all night about clients, so I'm going to try and finding work, I'm going to try and keep it quite short, but I mentioned before, relationships are at the heart of my business, and I spend a lot of my time networking, and that is where a lot of my business has come from. But also on a personal level, networking has been hugely important to me. Going from the corporate environment, working in a busy, bustling office, to sitting at home in my pyjamas in front of the laptop was quite a culture shock. And I knew, at least by networking, I was going to be spending time with like-minded individuals and that they could support me in that way. Because I think there's a lot of challenges, which I'd like to touch on, some of them. Healthy boundaries is something that you should definitely consider. And most PAs and EAs are great at this. They're great at maintaining boundaries for their executives and themselves. But when you've got clients who perhaps want you to fulfill that PA role and they expect you to be there at their beck and call, there's a certain degree of healthy boundary setting that you need to take into account. Because if you're doing that for one client, how are you going to manage that with 10? And also for your own peace of mind, you need to make sure that those boundaries are in place and that the line between work and life gets blurred when you work from home and you're building a business. So it's really important that you give that some consideration. And I know, I should have asked this sooner, I know we've got another VA in the room tonight who we were enjoying a conversation before, but is there anybody else, any other VAs or anybody that works remotely in this space? And is there anyone that's considering becoming or curious about becoming a virtual assistant? Cool. I'm going off on a tangent. So sales is another thing that I wanted to share with you all. If you've got a sales background, I would say that's a hugely advantageous thing to you as an aspiring virtual assistant, because you've got to sell yourself and your services, and a lot of the VAs that I work with find that really a great source of anxiety. There's something incredibly exposing about suddenly selling your services in such a way. And fear, as I touched in my title of this session, thank you. Fear is something that we all feel, and when I was absolutely terrified the day that I decided, I cried actually, the day that I handed my notice in, I cried because it was such a relief to say it out loud, and my boss was like, "Are you happy about this decision?" It's like, yeah, no, I really am, but it just felt like such a big thing. And when I reflect back on that fear, I think I'm trying to compare it to tonight, standing up and talking to you all. It is scary, but I was really worried about all the practical stuff. I was worried about, would I be good enough? Would I find clients? Would I know how to do the work? Did I know enough about business? Was I good enough? All those kind of things were running through my head. And when I reflect back on that, I didn't really give much thought to my mindset and the way that I was going to support myself emotionally. And actually, I think they are the two things that every great VA that I know has. And I think it's really important, whether it be a self-employed VA or not, having a really, really great support network is so, so important. And I know that's part of what these groups are all about and what the work that networking brings together. Having a group of people who've got your back, who will lift you up when you're feeling rubbish, when you've lost a client or you're having a tough day, it's so important. And I think if you put that support network with a strong, focused, resilient growth mindset, you can overcome any of those challenges. You can learn any new skill, and you can really push yourself out your comfort zone and grow and enjoy that. And I think a lot of VAs are fearful to put themselves out there. I know I was for a long time, and now I'm a little bit addicted to it. If I feel a little bit sick in my stomach, I want to do it. And I almost don't recognise the person that I was those years back in my corporate job. And I'm standing here with Post-its, and I'm aware that I've not looked at them, but I will do. Pricing's another challenge. A lot of VAs, aspiring VAs, like, how much do I charge? How do I charge? Is it an hourly rate? What do I do? And it's something that you really need to get right. I've seen so many, not just VAs, but I've been witness to so many talented people who are completely undercharging and undervaluing themselves. And if you don't nail your pricing as a virtual assistant, you won't ever be, you'll be a busy fool. The average UK VA rate is £25 an hour at the moment. And a lot of people don't apply their entrepreneur mindset, if you like. They're still looking at it as an employee, and they'll say, oh, well, if I'm happy to accept £15 an hour as an employee, why would I not charge that when I'm self-employed? And when you are self-employed, you need to pay for your own tax, you need to pay for your own NI, you need to buy your laptop and your equipment, all these things that you need to consider that come out of your rate. So pricing is something that really needs good focus and good attention. But the beautiful thing is, you're not carving it in stone. When you work for yourself, you can change it if it's not working. And self-doubt, which we talked about, but there's a couple of things. Before I became a VA, I was an executive assistant, and I think I made the assumption that all virtual assistants were ex-EAs or PAs, and that simply wasn't the case. And that was, one of the realizations that I had. And I think there's a lot of natural traits and soft skills that a lot of PAs possess that make them awesome VAs. And I've drawn a lot on things that I just kind of took for granted I was doing in my day job, your emotional agility, your emotional intelligence, diplomacy when you're managing management teams. All these things you can directly apply to managing your clients or your own VA team. And I think self-motivation is a big thing for me. I've never struggled with that. When I was an EA, my exec was never on the same continent as me, let alone in the same office, so I had to just keep myself going. And that's something that, again, I've taken for granted, but something that will really, really do you well when if you're considering becoming a VA. And it's not easy. I've made a lot of really horrendous mistakes, and I think that's the best way of learning sometimes. But I have enjoyed it greatly, and thank you. And I wish I'd done it sooner, I really do. But my little boy was my motivation, and he was the one that gave me jet-propelled me into embracing my fear, if you like. But I think touching back on the things that you don't have when you're self-employed, as well as the support and the emotional support, you won't have an IT department, for example. You won't have a legal department, you won't have an accounts department. So the best VAs that I know give focus to building relationships, not just with potential clients, but with other VAs and with potential suppliers. I found that really difficult. I was kind of like the oracle in my company. People come to me when they didn't know what to do or who to speak to about something, and then all of a sudden I found myself in the world of self-employment. I didn't know anyone or anything. So I think there was something in me that needed to develop relationships more beyond just where do I find work, where do I find work. And I've always applied that holistic approach, if you like, to my business. So I think I'm getting close to wrapping up, but I'm just wondering if I want to just get you guys to ask me these questions and we can talk about them instead of me sitting here reading post-its. That kind of backfired a little bit. So I'll open to questions from you. Please raise your hand, jump up, shout out. Let's have a discussion about what you want to know.
How easy was it for you to be employed and turn and self? Because it's quite a scary thing to have no income, steady income.
Yes.
So how did you manage that fear?
I did both for 6 months and it nearly killed me. My son was very young, not sleeping. I was working part-time, I was building the business. I had no social life, but I was able to save all the money that I was earning. And it was a really hard 6 months. And I kind of said, oh, well, when I get to this point, when I'm earning this much, when I've got this many clients, that point, that ideal right time never comes. So I did find I was getting close to being burnt out and I just had to just go for it. And the worst thing that can happen is you go and get another job. That was what I just kept telling myself. But I'm not completely. I used to work for a recruitment company, so I know a lot of recruitment consultants. It feels huge. The fear is real, but you've got to put the perspective in there. And the worst thing that can happen is you find another job. But yeah, I did both for 6 months. Some people I know have saved up a certain amount of money, or they've took redundancy and then they've gone for it. You know your personal situation better than anyone else, so you've got to find what's right for you. Thank you.
If someone asks a question, do you do it your business or do you have other people that work for you?
Me and my husband run the business, and we do have a team of people, of associates that we use for various different things. So yeah, it's not just us anymore, and that was another.
You have other VAs then?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, will you repeat what the question is because it won't come up on the mic?
Of course. Of course.
Anyone else?
How long did it take you to build kind of an equivalency in salary?
How long did it take me to build the same salary? Well, because I came from maternity leave, I had a year of maternity leave, which was not a great package, I must admit. So,
If you take your last EA salary, before maternity, how long would you say it took you in your VA business to build up? Not identical, but an equivalency based on how much time you were working, and because obviously one of the things that you do it for is flexibility.
yeah, I would probably say it was probably 3 to 6 months. But I had a good client base before I left anyway, so it was that transition took. It's never a straight line, is it? So yeah, probably it took me about 3 to 6 months, I would say, to build up that. But I had the benefit of coming off maternity leave, so any money was better than what I was on, if you know what I mean. But it's such a personal thing when you're looking at money is obviously a huge factor if you're considering building a business, and it needs to be right. But also you can give what you can give in time. Some of the VAs I work with, they just want 1 or 2 clients so they can just have a few hours here and there, and that suits them. But if you're trying to replace a full-time salary, obviously that's a completely different thing. So does that help?
Yeah, and that's why I said equivalency, because it's kind of like pro rata, isn't it?
Yeah.
The benefits you get versus the income you can generate versus the person.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think I'm probably working harder than I ever was. But it's for me, and I'm enjoying it so much more, and I'm getting so much more fulfillment. And I've met some incredible people, and yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Where did your first client come from?
My first client where did my first client come from? Sorry, I'm forgetting that's there. My first client came to me from, actually, it was a referral from one of my colleagues at work. She was close to leaving to start her own business, and we'd formed that connection, and we were sharing and planning together. And one of her friends was looking for some admin support, and she put me in touch, and I still support her today. So.
Because loads must come from referrals.
Yeah, not 80-90% of our client base is our clients referring us, which is the holy grail as far as I'm concerned. The fact that you're making a difference on someone's life and then they're actually telling other people about you, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So, but then I do know other VAs who have filled their books just by posting things on LinkedIn. Or applying using LinkedIn in a certain way. So I'm a huge advocate of finding what works for you, and for me, it's all about people. So, thank you. Hello.
Hello. Do you think if you hadn't had a baby, would you have ever considered or approached the idea of becoming a personal assistant?
I love that question. So if I hadn't had my son, would I have?
Would you have ever considered the idea of opening my own business and being a personal assistant, or you would have carried on with the 9 to 5 months to Friday?
I'm going to be brutally honest now, and I think if I hadn't had my little boy, I would probably be going through the motions in a job that I hated. And I say hated, I loved my job, I just didn't like the circumstances in that I was doing them. And I think when I took a year off, went through the changes that motherhood brought, when I went back, I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing? What have I been doing here? This doesn't light me up. So I do, he's my greatest teacher, and I think I probably would still be there.
Okay.
Good question, thank you. What do you think? Do you think I would have still been there?
The thing is that probably there are times when we had. So I'm myself that the biggest changes that we do in our lives is when we are so pushed to the maximum of it. It's either it could be the differences in our workplace, stress, boss that has left, jealousy, envy, etc., etc., etc. There are so many things in it. And although we try to be very resilient about it, there are times when we find it very difficult and the struggle is real.
Yeah.
And not the worst things come for the worst. There are also, like, obviously not in your case, but it takes courage to even consider the idea of going into business, because it takes a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have nothing to like, okay, just give it a try. It goes bad, hopefully it doesn't, but if it goes bad, I'll just go back to my 9 to 5. But having the courage to say, okay, this is not working for me anymore, I gotta change that, regardless of if I have something or if I don't have certainty. It's not for everybody, because most of the people just carry on doing it. We have a salary at the end of the month, we're happy with it. I do my thing, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I go home, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's something that has
Yeah. But I think you're right, and I don't believe in coincidence. I do think everything happens when it's supposed to for the right reasons, and there's no such thing as a bad experience. It might be painful, you might be having a really, really terrible time, but there's always something to learn from that. And for me, I think I didn't realise how toxic my environment was. And I'm not saying the company I worked for was toxic. For me, it was. I think I'd spent a lot of time. Yeah, I kind of didn't realise that I didn't fit in until I took the year out and went back, and then thought, hey, do you know what? It doesn't matter if it's me. It doesn't matter if it's everyone else. This is not working for me right now, so I'm going to walk away. And I think motherhood gave me that courage and that strength, because I kind of feel like I've got a duty to my son to be the best person that I can be. And what's the worst that can happen? Come on, it's human nature. We completely default to negative all the time. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to train myself, as well as being friends with fear. I think that what's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, tonight, I still am a little bit terrified. Standing up in front of you amazing people tonight, the first thing I thought was, oh, boob's gonna fall out, I'm gonna fall over, I'm gonna forget what I was saying. I did forget a lot of what I was gonna say, but I did it. What's the best thing that can happen? I could make some really great connections and maybe make some new friendships, or I just think you owe it to yourself to explore both options at all times.
Like a cold heart. Is your heart to tell you, just go, it's that way, and don't look back?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's funny because I was talking about this earlier. I'm quite an instinctive person, and I think I've spent most of my life trying to suppress the instincts. And the more that I'm listening to them, the stronger they're becoming. And I'm not saying that I'm kind of, ooh, I don't feel right about this. If I have that feeling, I will look at ways to validate that. And for me, the risk of sitting in my job, always wondering what if, versus the risk of actually, do you know what, I'm going to give it a go. I felt like I had to make a choice about what was the bigger risk. But yeah, I kind of knew in my heart that it would be all right and I'd figure it out. But I owe a lot to my husband because he was able to support me financially for a little while and emotionally, and I think my proudest moment was the day I said to him, you need to leave your job. He'd been threatening it. It was like so unfulfilled in what he was doing. And he'd never had a background as a PA or anything like that. But we've worked together, and he was a bigger risk then, not leaving his company, because I was starting to drop balls. I'd got clients relying on me for things. I was all these things to all these people, and I was heading towards not a good place. So I kind of just said, it's your decision, but you need to do it. You need to leave your job. And again, what's the worst thing that can happen? You go and find another job that you don't hate as much. And touch wood, he hasn't yet. Thank you. Yes, yeah.
Write a business plan.
Did I write a business plan? Yes. And that business plan, I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. But that's a really, really big thing I've learned, that actually you're never going to get things perfect. You've got to go for progress over perfection. And one of my friends who has their own business told me that quite early on. So when I wrote my business plan, it was literally a bit of paper saying, this is what I want to earn, this is what I want to work, and then this is how I'm going to do it. And it's a lot more complex than that now, but that's kind of how it's evolved. Because I like to write things down, and I think it's important to have a plan, but it doesn't have to be this big convoluted barrier that you put up for yourself. Thank you.
With your clients, is it project-based or is it hourly? Like, how do you charge them? If it's hourly, how do you keep track of your time? How do you log your time? What if a client wants to know how much time you actually spend on something?
Okay. So with regards to, essentially we are selling time, so there is an hourly rate that is at the heart of what we do. We offer various different service packages. We were talking about this earlier. For example, I offer a social media package. And we realised quite early on that the more you do something, the better you become, the more efficient you become. We know this. So if I'm charging an hourly rate, I'm going to end up earning less. So we do have various different service packages that we've refined based on what we know we can do, how long it takes, etc. We do project work, so if it's seasonal demands, event work, which we would normally try and put a fixed price on. But the dream for us is having retained work. So we hold a certain amount of time for that client each month over a fixed period of time. Again, the hourly rate's at the back of that, so that's really important to get that right. Yeah, when you're selling your time, you can only earn as much as you're prepared to give. So the service packages are a really great way of increasing your income. Okay, thank you. Hello.
On your hourly rate, do you counter in things like your vacation time, sick leave, and things like your insurances,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
How
so
do you do that?
I've got a formula which I initially used because again, it's the kind of leap in mindset from employee to entrepreneur, if you like, because you might want to say, well, I work 8 hours a day, I work 5 days a week, I work 70 weeks a year, so I'm going to divide my salary by that, but then you're missing all those things. So I've got a little formula which I'll happily share with you as to how to work out the way that because you're not going to be working, if you're running a business, you're not going to be billing 8 hours a day. If you were, you'd be laughing. But you've got to develop the business, you've got to develop your relationships, you've got to do your own admin, you've got to do your own invoicing, you've got to do your own marketing, all of these non-billable activities which take time. So grab one of my cards and I'll gladly share that formula with you, because my words are failing me tonight. I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a numbers person, my husband is. But yeah, does that help?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this business development, I'm thinking that must take a good watch of time, and there must be a way of kind of accounting for the amount of business development you need to be doing, whether it's with the client that you're currently charging or other clients.
Yeah. I mean, everything in life, I think, comes to balance, doesn't it? And when I first started the business, I had a lot more, the huge portion of my week was business development, whereas now I dedicate 1 day a week where I am working solely on the business. So I will count today as that, because this is developing me, hopefully developing my business in some way. And again, we work remotely, we work virtually, but it comes back to relationships. I like to call my clients and say, how's it going? I like to meet with my clients and go for coffee and get to know them. You know, I was talking about this with someone earlier. It's a VA, as a PA or an EA, is a strategic partner to our business. And the most successful relationships we have with our clients, they recognise that. But it's communication. There's all these challenges with being remotely and being two separate businesses. So yeah, it's not all purely billable. If it was, then I would be laughing. Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I've got a question.
Thank you.
When you speak to your clients, or even based on what you want, what you know, what kind of benefits do you bring to your clients as a VA rather than them having a PA?
Okay, great question. So the kind of what's the benefits of working with a VA over a traditional employee, if you like?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, all of our clients are either solo entrepreneurs or smaller businesses, because I felt like, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. But for online entrepreneurs, they don't necessarily have the traditional office setup. Or a lot of our clients are like me, they've left the corporate world behind. They don't necessarily want to fix themselves to an office. So there's those practicalities. A VA will work remotely and is responsible for their own equipment and setup, so you don't have to worry about that. But I think that's a big benefit. But the flexibility as well, again, when I reflect on my client base, small businesses, they might not be ready to take that leap. They might not be ready, because I know from my time in recruitment and just generally, people are everything. And if you hire wrong, as a small business, it can be pretty much fatal. So I think a lot of people like the flexibility that they get with a VA. They can have a really experienced PA for low risk. You're getting maximum productivity time out of them. They're not charging you for going for a pee or making a cup of coffee. You know, they're running the clock, which reminds me that I didn't answer your question on logging time. We charge in minimum of 10-minute blocks, and I got a little bit obsessed with time for a little while because we run a clock on everything and we have systems that store time versus different clients. So we'd provide updates, whether that be a weekly report, monthly report, however that's set for that client. So we have to be absolutely transparent. If we're selling time, if we're selling a service package, we deliver the service. And then we would provide statistics or analytics depending on what it is at the back of that. Sorry, there's me going off on a tangent again. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's amazing. I wasn't expecting so many questions from you all. Thank you. Probably means that my talk was a bit rubbish, but there we go.
Which would be the main pitfall that we have to put attention on?
Main pitfall, just one?
Or
No, I would, again, if I'm being honest, and reflecting on my personal situation, I think the biggest challenge has been what I've been telling myself. And that, I think, is probably my biggest pitfall when I've been self-doubting and not talking to myself kindly. Probably not, and on a practical level, I think the pricing and the finance thing is huge.
But the other thing is that everything that reflects in our mind is going to reflect outside.
Mhm.
So yes.
Absolutely,
This
yeah.
one is very, very important to take
Absolutely.
an eye on it.
Thank you. Hi.
if you have multiple clients, how do you prioritise if urgent things have come in?
Good question. How do we prioritise? Well, we do have different arrangements. I've made life difficult for myself by being very client-led, and I'd spend a lot of time at the start of the relationship defining boundaries, requirements. Most clients, I would agree, a certain amount of time at a certain day of the week, for example. If they've got reports that need running on a Tuesday, I'd schedule some time for them on a Tuesday. And we tend to have a 48-hour turnaround on non-urgent tasks for my own peace of mind and also for our clients. If I'm working on a client-focused piece of work, it's not fair that another client, it is a juggling act, and that took a lot. Going from one exec to all of a sudden I've got 5 executives, it was a juggle. But I think all of our clients tend to feel like their issue is urgent and the most important, as people tend to. So I think communication is a huge thing with that, trying to set those expectations in the first instance and train, if you like, our clients that they are not my only client and they are not the boss of me. And I think communication is key to that. And also, I do tend to, I'm a bit obsessive checking my emails as well, because most people will ring if there's something urgent and I will deal with it. Or a member of the team will deal with it. We've got an office line now, so there's somebody that will always be at the end of the phone, and that a lot of people take a lot of value from that.
Do you feel you do more comprehensive work now than when you was in the office? That's a bit more relationships and knowing the business and what their goals and values are. But if you work for different clients, you're basically just doing their comprehensive work like you'll be in a back office. Do you miss that aspect of it?
Yes and no, because I do have a few clients, and it's particularly the work that I do with other VAs, where I feel it's a lot more strategic, it's a lot more involved, because I guess I'm dealing with the business owner now. I'm not dealing with the whole departments and I'm having to put forms through and get so-and-so's approval. I'm dealing directly with the business owner. So I think actually I have got a lot more autonomy, I've understood a lot more about different businesses and the way different people are and values, and I think I've learned a lot more about people, I guess, since I've been running the business. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just feel like I miss that relationship base that I have in my company.
Yeah. But then you could argue you'd find that with a client.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, again, that's why I think I threw myself on the networking scene, because I needed to find my people and know that I could have somebody that I could have a heart-to-heart with and say, this is really tough, I think I'm going to give up, which I've done a lot over the past 3 years. My husband, every month, he's like, oh, you're going to give up again? I'm like, yeah, it's too much. It happens. But I think that's, for me, I did need that. And it's just a different way of doing it. But yeah, thank you. I think that's it. I think I've talked enough at you all tonight. Thank you so much, and thank you to Lisa for inviting me to speak. I've scattered some business cards around, and there's some leaflets, and if you've got any questions, or if you would like to, we have got a few opportunities at Alchemy VA. If you would like to explore or have a confidential conversation, get in touch, and look me up on LinkedIn as well, because I love LinkedIn and I would really love to connect with you all a bit more. So thank you.